The OERup webinar. My name is Kevin Campbell-Wright. I work for the National Institute of Adult Continuing Education, and I'm pressing the buttons in this webinar today. I'd like to introduce Ines Kreitlein from who's leading the project, and she's going to take you through the agenda and introduce a little bit more about what the project is involving. So thank you very much, and Ines, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for the introduction on all the helpful information. As you said, my name is Ines Kreitlein. I work for MFG Innovation Agency in Stuttgart here in Germany. And I will lead you a little bit through this webinar today and also introduce our training program to you. But before I get started with all of this, of course, we would be very interested in who you are. I know you registered beforehand, but we don't know, not everyone signed up or logged in eventually here today. So please, if you find the time in the chat, just write a quick note. Who you are, what you already did that with your name, but also your profession. Are you a teacher? Are you manager of an institution? And so on. Please let us know. It's just interesting to see who's joining here. All right, to start off, this is the agenda for today. So we have got the welcome. There is an introduction on OERup, the project behind this webinar, and the following training. We will have an expert here who will talk with us about the philosophy behind open education and also the role that adult educators play in this game. And as I said, I will introduce to you the training program, which I hope to see you all as learners in starting at the beginning of November. Of course, there is time before we finish for your questions and answers at the very end. All right, now OERup is a project co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. It lasts for 2 years. We started in September 2014, and I can't believe it's already half time and we're in October 2015 already. We're 5 partners, MFG from Germany. We have a partner in Spain, in Great Britain, in Italy, and Romania. If you want to know more about that, please just go to our website, oerup.eu. And OERup, the abbreviation basically stands for Straightforward Open Educational Resources Uptake in Adult Education. What we want to do, our aim is adult learning actors to be informed about OER. We want to enable them to use OER, and of course, connect all of those who are involved in open education. How are we doing that? We started off with a need analysis. First of all, we need to know what our target group needs in order to reach our goals. We had interviews, roundtable discussions, and in our partner regions. This was finished in February already. If you go to our website, you can see the reports and the results which led to the training development, which is really the core of this training. So what we want to do is develop a training for you to inform, enable, and connect you all in adult learning. And well, here it says, it talks about the pilot. So we're right in the middle of it. This is the opening webinar of the pilot for the training. So we want to test it, this blended learning format with an online learning part, workshops, and mentoring. I will talk about that later on more in detail. But of course, the pilot is not everything. Once the pilot is finished, we want to add what's been missing, fix what needs to be fixed, and finally present the training material and guideline for you to use in August 2016. So this is what we do. To start off, as a good project, the kickoff is always important in order to define the important terms in use. The important terms in use for us is OER. What does Open Educational Resources stand for? What do we understand by these terms? And also Open Educational Practices, OEP. Now, Open Educational Resources, we think and go for the definition that they need to be without any barriers, available and accessible for use, adaptation, and redistribution. Despite some opinions, OER definitely respects the copyright of the creator. How can you ensure that is by open licensing or even public domain licenses that you add to these resources. Educational resource, what is meant by that? It's of course any material designed for teaching, learning, and research. It could be a curriculum, it can be a video, it can be any learning item for use by educators, students, and self-learners. And it can be available on any carrier, online as well as offline, although of course I have to say online is the most important here, since accessibility and the reach when you share it is just much bigger, obviously, for digital material. Now, open educational practices, we said that of course only the existence of OER doesn't ensure its sustainable use, so there needs to be an open environment. There needs to be some kind of strategies, institutional strategies, for example, an open policy in your institution that ensures and gives teachers the opportunity to use OER. It includes innovative teaching and learning methods, so open pedagogies, it will be a topic in this training as well, is considered an open educational practice. And OEP also, very important, accept learners as co-producers of material. So it's not just the teacher, but also the learner involved in the use and creation of resources and material. But I don't want to lose too much time talking about all of this, because we have an expert here who will inform us more in detail what lies behind these terms. Welcome, Alastair Clark. He's our expert today. I'm very happy he's here. He is definitely an adult learning professional, teacher, still active teacher, of course, a researcher among many topics, of course, also OER. And you can see later on in the recording one more time, but also on our website, his blogs and his Twitter if you want to follow him after this. So thank you, Alastair.
Thank you very much, Ines. And it's over to me now. I'm hoping that people can hear me okay. And I can see myself up there, which is great. Okay, so thanks to Kevin and to Ines for kicking off this webinar today. I think we're all experts here. It's been great seeing people contribute to the chat box. Keep writing as I speak, please. It'd be great to have your comments on what I have to say. I realise that, first of all, the majority of you are listening in a language which is not your first language. If I'm speaking too fast or using terms which are not clear, please feel free to tell me to slow down or ask me questions. I've been asked to talk about the philosophy of OER. I changed it to the background, but it's the kind of what it's all about. And I know that for a lot of you, you may very well have covered this kind of ground before. But if we're starting a training program, it's a pretty good idea to have a common sense of our understanding. So this is me kicking it off, but you'll contribute to this because e-learning is about participation. Okay, this is where I am. It's not as sunny as this in Derbyshire in England today, but this is in the middle of England, and my name is Alastair Clark. It's a Scottish name. My mother was Scottish, and I, as well as working for the National Institute for Adult Continuing Education in the UK, I've also worked for various adult education providers, and I now have this little consultancy called Stirring Learning. Colleagues, sharing is not something which is new. Sharing publicly funded educational resources is not new. And sharing educational resources generally is not new. People have been doing this for a long time. It's good practice and we care about it. The thing is that the digital age provides us with a myriad of technologies and devices that actually makes this more possible and cheaper. And that's really, I think, why the whole area of open education has kicked off in the last 10 years. But at the end of the day, it is about learning and it's about learners rather than about the technology. The technology is what allows it to happen. Many of you will know that the term open educational resource was first coined in 2002 by the UNESCO, United Nations Education and Scientific Organization, and then solidified through a declaration 10 years later in 2012 when the Paris Declaration was actually published by UNESCO at their headquarters, really encouraging all members of the UN to commit to open ed. I think we actually have the definition which came from the Paris Declaration. That definition of open education resource is the one which has been adopted by OERup, and it was summarized by Ines earlier, so I'm not actually going to repeat that, but we understand that the principle is that an investment in education is made as widely available as possible. It sounds like it is a no-brainer and it's obvious, but if I can just relate a personal anecdote, not too many years ago, working with a partner from another country in the EU, they had some very good resources which had been funded by their Ministry of Education for a project they were doing, and we said these would be great for the next project we're going to do. And the person who created the resources, but with funding from their central government, said, "I'm terribly sorry, there's no way this can be used. It was a condition of our funding from our government that they retained the copyright and took complete control out how these publicly funded resources could be used." Now, what a terrible waste. Fortunately, I think things are moving. When we're talking about publicly shareable resources, we're talking about materials where the copyright may well be retained by the creator, but there's a clear license placed on the material indicating how it can be used by other people. And the most common form of license, not the only one, but the most common form is the Creative Commons license. And these figures came out at the end of last year showing how in the period from 2006 to 2014, huge increase in the use of these licenses. We in Britain get on very well with our friends across the Atlantic in America, but we do argue about the spelling of the word license. When we use it as a noun, we spell it differently. We spell it L-I-C-E-N-C-E, but we'll go with the American on this one. Okay. Just a reminder really that the whole area of open educational resource is part of a bigger open family, an opening up, which really was inspired by the notion of open source software. Open research is now becoming very much an important part of the higher education field. The sharing of open data. More government organisations are now recognising that they need to be sharing data which has been, the collection of which has been publicly funded. Open access publications, not necessarily across all of higher education, but the Association for Learning Technology here in the UK, for example, I'm a trustee of that association. All of our professional journals are now open access and freely available online. Open courses, and we can't have missed the great mushrooming of MOOCs. Open educational resources are in there on the list, and of course open APIs, ways of computer programs actually talking to each other. So there's a big family here of open, and open is hitting the zeitgeist, if I can borrow that German word. Probably worth just going back to these pioneering work that came after the initial meeting in Paris in 2002, and how the MIT courseware was widely basically made open at the time. They made a big splash of this and were funded by the Hewlett Foundation, but they've been followed by a great many other organizations who have committed to open, and which is great. And you know, we have work, and we have Paul Richardson here from Wales, and there's a declaration for Open Wales, for example, and a charter for Open Scotland as well. And I'm sure there will be other national declarations. This interesting piece of work, Power Up, if you've not come across it, is worth checking out. This project was really to study the state of open education policy and practice across the European Union, and they've published a number of case studies as well as a summary of policy. I think it is about a couple of years old now, and colleagues in Germany, I think, will be delighted to know it's a little bit out of date. In other words, things have moved, particularly in some countries, from the way that they were recorded 2 years ago. Coming back much to a smaller scale, I'm just going to share with you very briefly a piece of research we did in Derby, in the middle of England, with adult educators earlier in this year. We called the project Making More of Open Educational Resource, MMOER. And we, before people started, we asked them what their engagement was. Well, you can see that 40% of them hadn't, these are adult educators, had never heard of OER. About 25% said, I've heard of OER, and the but is never used them. Another 22% said, I've looked at OERs and used them a little. And a very small number had actually adapted an OER, and none had licensed. So that was our experience. It'd be interesting to know what your experience with your with your client groups are, really, your stakeholders. Okay, does this matter to adult educators? Well, these are the kind of statements that we found we use. If it's on the internet, I'll use it anyway. I don't care about copyright. I don't care about anything. I'm sure it's free to use. Well, serious problems there and a misunderstanding. Then there's this other statement, free or open, it's all the same to me. What I'm hoping is that within this training there'll be opportunities for people to unpick the difference between free and open, because there are different kinds of free. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with these two statements. My materials aren't good enough to share. I'm embarrassed about the criticism I may get from colleagues on the quality of the materials I have. And then the other side of the coin, which is our materials are brilliant, so we don't want other people to use our hard work. That keep it all for me argument. This was the one I referred to earlier. Our funders won't allow us to share. I think that is, hopefully we're increasingly getting the right kind of form of words to offer to funders to indicate that they'll actually get more bangs for their buck if they do allow materials to be more widely available. And then this last one, which I think is very, very relevant to adult learning. Our learning is context specific. So we're never really sure that materials produced in Romania are actually going to be good for somebody in the Netherlands, for example. And this is where the reuse becomes important. So the 5 R's, I'm going to finish with the 5 R's. Again, Ines really referred to these generally, that for anything to be an open education resource, you need to be able to retain it, to reuse it, to revise it, to remix it, and to redistribute it. And again, that will come up, I'm sure, in the course. This is what was said to me at the beginning of the training in Derby. Sounds interesting and will make me look into this more effectively. I'm keen to do it. There are some buttons out there which we need to press to make the world go open. I think OERup is a great contributor to the pressing of those buttons. We'll also come across some buttons that say do not press. Colleagues, let's get out and press all of the buttons and make this work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for this very interesting insight. Now, our next task or our next step in this webinar involves all of you listeners as well, because we have an activity where we're asking you to let us know what do you think are the potential and challenges of OER in adult learning. I know we have people here who haven't heard of OER yet. We have people who are a bit more experienced. I want all of you to share your opinions, and please just write these opinions in the box that Kevin just opened below here. So we have a column for potential, we have a column for challenges. You will be writing in the box below thoughts and challenges, and then Alastair and myself, we will just copy and paste it up here to be able to cluster it a little bit, because if we're all doing this at the same time, there's going to be a big chaos. So I'll give you 5 minutes for this, and I'm very looking forward to your opinions here.
Obviously, I think everybody can type, but if anybody did want to open a microphone for any reason, put so in the chat room, and we'll see what we can do. But it's probably easiest, particularly for Ines, who's got to come back and copy and paste all this in a moment, if it's typed into the thoughts and challenges box. Ines, if anybody is watching the recording of this and thinks there's something major we've missed, is there something they can do? Could they email us, perhaps?
Yes, of course. We will actually copy whatever is being listed here as well to an open Padlet, so people can, while they're on the virtual our learning platform, continuously add things and post their comments and so on. Yes. Alastair, could you help me and filter out the challenges here, because it's going quite fast.
So you know, when you've done all the typing, Ines is going to sort some of these a little bit more while the rest of us watch a video. But obviously we're trying to keep on top of it as well as we go along.
I'm glad to see that the potentials are also just as many as the challenges.
I think you gave me the negative ones, Ines.
There's hope. All right, I'll give you just 2 more minutes and then just continue with the video, Kevin.
Okie dokie.
I saw earlier there was a question about learning analytics posted by Silke. Could you just write 1 or 2 more sentences? What do you mean here?
I like Alexandra's comment that teachers would be more creative. I hope that's a potential, not a challenge. Okay, that's helpful, Silke. So you're talking about learning analytics that give people some feedback effectively on how they're achieving. Yeah, that's great, Silke. Thanks very much. And I like Paul's comment about making it social. It's probably a potential, isn't it? But that's important. Any tips on that, Paul, you might like to add to how the whole process can be made more social? Yeah, I think the possibilities for small adult education providers is really important, isn't it? Because increasingly, I think it is small organisations that are making an important contribution towards the whole. Gosh, there's a lot of stuff here about motivation. Stefania, thank you very much for that.
Yeah. All right, looking at the time, I'm very, very sorry to stop this. Well, actually, it's not stopped. I will post the links to our virtual Padlet line later on so you can continue adding those things. For now, I suggest we continue with our video that Alastair prepared for us, his opinion about these potentials and challenges. And later on, well, in the meantime, we'll cluster this and sum it up after the video.
Okay, I'm going to switch to the video in about 5 seconds, and when I do, if you're in the middle of typing, it's going to stop what you're typing. So please finish what you're typing so that you don't lose something useful. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Alastair Clark and I'm speaking to you from the lovely Derbyshire Dales here in England. I've been involved in adult education for many years, looking at policy, practice and national research, but also as a frontline tutor, and Monday and Tuesday nights I'm still out there teaching groups of adult learners. The Open Agenda, colleagues, is an adult education agenda. It's one that is naturally ours. It's about access, it's about collaboration, and it's about sharing of resources to make the best possible learning experiences for our learners. I think we as educators need to be making certain personal commitments. I'd like you to share with you what I think those should be. First of all, we need to get out there and look for the resources and find them. We'll find some good stuff along the way and we'll find some not so good stuff along the way, but that's actually part of a really important piece of continuous professional development, looking at resources and making judgments about them. Once we've found them, we may use them as they are, but actually the skill of adapting and changing resources is really important, because that allows us to take materials and place them in exactly the right context for the learners that we know and who we work with. We should make a commitment for our own materials to be made publicly available to use by licensing them properly. So we should always start to think about licensing our materials so that others can use them. We should encourage our institutions to have a commitment to OER, so that materials that are produced institution-wide are available for others to use. And we should encourage public funders to deploy their resources in such a way that materials that are produced are available to other people. Because basically, if it's public money, the resources should be available to the public. Finally, if this is really an open agenda, it is about changing the relationship between taught and teachers, and we need to be placing more power in the hands of our learners, encouraging them to source and to adapt open educational resources, but also encouraging them to create their own and license them and make them available to other people. Okay, colleagues, we're on an exciting journey here. The future is bright and the future is open. I look forward to sharing my resources with you and finding some of your resources that maybe.
Right, great. That was really useful there from Alastair. I'm just going to make sure that the other presenters are back in the room, and so you can just see some of the things that we've sorted out there. I'm just going to give you 1 second to have a quick look at those before we get on with the presentation. So if you just want to scroll through the potentials and challenges, you can. And I'll just give you another 10 seconds to do that, and then we'll switch back to Ines to do the main presentation. We can always come back at the end for those who are not watching the recording and take another look at those lists. So, okay, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look. Like I say, we'll come back at the end. Back over to you, Ines. mic's not open.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, I think it's working now. All right. Thank you for that, and thank you, Alastair, for the video preparing. I think it's always nice to have a bit of green in the background instead of just sitting in these empty rooms here. So we're right in that activity, as Kevin said. Well, since you posted so much, it took quite a lot of time to put it all together. We'll look at it later on, and thank you, Alastair, for clustering it back together. So just to continue, now that you've had an insight into this topic, I want to get to the core of what we're doing in the training and what this webinar is really the opening for, which is the OER training for adult educators. Now, first of all, just to remind you, I want to show you our target group. It's teachers, trainers, mentors, tutors, and at the same time, but of course, staff and management of adult learning institutions and consultants. As we've seen before, when it comes to open educational practices, everyone needs to be involved and on board. These are our topics. You may have seen them already on our platform. Of course, getting to know OER, the terms in use, what open licenses are there, how do I apply them, and so forth. Then OER, it's already out there, is the next topic. OER already exists. We're not the first ones creating them here. So find the repositories and be able to assess the quality of different resources in order to use the good ones for your work, of course. Then the third point, if you have individual things or you already have a course set up or you want to create a resource, then create it as an OER, and how you do that will be shown in this module. Anyone can do it. Now the last two ones are a bit separate from the others. It's OEP, Open Educational Practices, OER in the classroom. They're separate because those are the only ones that are specifically for part of the target group. So open pedagogies are obviously for those meant who are active in the classroom, so teachers, trainers, mentors, and tutors. Everyone else is of course invited, but that's the target group most important here. And open educational practices, more from a strategic and institutional point of view. So OER as part of a strategy. This one is designed for the target group, staff and management of adult learning institutions, as well as consultants. No, I'll tell you that later. So the different training steps, we have 3 altogether of them. The first one starts in 10 days, November the 1st. Although you can see already the website or the link to the login to this platform, it's open now, so you can log in and have a look at what we have already uploaded here. It's not finished all the way, but you get a pretty good idea about what's happening here, and you can already read through the sections of how to get started and so on. So the most important things at the beginning. So it's a self-directed online learning. It's readings, videos, and tasks. Each week we'll have an expert webinar and a forum discussion. Expert webinars if it's applicable to the topic, of course. It doesn't repeat what you have read online. It's something additional, additional knowledge from the experts, and you can ask them questions, of course. We have a pre-designed learning path that we recommend to you, but of course if you decide I want to do all of this in the first week of November because after that I don't have time, all modules are open. You can have a look at the readings, do the tasks and so on your own. Of course, you cannot then be live at the expert webinars, but they will be recorded for everyone to look at later on. So it's an open platform. This is what it looks like when you logged in. Pretty straightforward. What is missing right now is a timeline, which we will add, so you kind of know when we recommend you to do certain tasks. Once we're finished with this online part, or you're finished with the online part, in January we will have the second step. It's the face-to-face workshops. As you know, this is a blended learning training, so we have online parts combined with offline learning. Those will happen in Stuttgart for this pilot on the 21st of January, and in Timisoara, as well as in Leicester. Now, I'm well aware that we may have learners who may not be able to join us for these workshops. Of course, you can still participate, you can do the tasks. We will inform you about what we're doing in these workshops and do them on the online learning platform. What's happening in these workshops? Well, apply what you have learned during the online phase, and then brainstorm, discuss, and develop your OER project with peers, other adult learning educators or adult learning actors, actually. And with us, of course, we will be there as well as your mentors. Here's just a hint. As I said before, if you can't participate, do the tasks on Teachable, that's the online platform, and stay tuned via Google+, the community that probably most of you, I think, may have joined already. The third step is the peer review and mentoring phase. We have had the online learning, we have had the workshop where you started your OER project, and from that moment on until 10th of March, we would like to follow you with your project, and we will do that on the Google+ Hangouts. We want you to share your experiences, and of course, at the same time, you will gain feedback to your project and the different steps you may have already taken and the challenges you may have faced. You can discuss them with the peers and with us as your mentors of this training. Again, if you're not in Timisoara, Stuttgart, or Leicester, and you still want to engage in a project by yourself, feel free to join us, of course, for these Google+ Hangouts. They're open, and when these Hangouts take place, we will inform all of you via our website. Now, at this point, I would like to start the trainings, your questions and answers about the training, but also, of course, to Alastair. So please feel free to answer at this point, to ask at this point, and we'll answer to you. I will give you a few minutes here. We have 10 minutes left, and then we may want to go back to our potential and challenges lists, I assume. I hope I have not missed any questions that you may have written in the chat.
And any questions in the chat, perhaps you could type them into the question box now so that we can see them and make sure they get answered.
Well, Kevin, while people think about their questions, why not let's go back to the to our challenges and potentials, just to have a last quick look at them.
Yeah, I wonder whether we could invite people, as well as writing questions, to write comments and contributions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm going to, yeah, as soon as those two questions are typed, I'm just going to switch it back, but I'll put the question box in so people can continue typing, because when I switch it, we'll lose the question box, but I'll put it back in so we can see it. So just bear with me 1 second. I'll wait till these people have finished typing before I do it.
Well, in the meantime, I can answer the question of Linda. Linda Griese asked, I'm not sure about the project to develop. Should it be a real one or just like an example we developed together? The answer is, if you have a project maybe already in mind and you want to, just go through the steps, rethink the idea with others, then we can do that. And it can be a real project which you start developing and implementing in your, teaching environment, in your institution. Obviously, we may not be able to follow you right until the end because you know, between January and March, that's maybe not enough time, depending on how extensive your project is. But it could be either. It could be fictional or something you actually want to implement. Of course, the real one is more interesting, just also to follow you up on your steps when you're implementing it, and to see what your experiences with it is. All right, in the meantime, I would like to go through just a quick, we didn't have, like I said, too much time to collect it. I just dropped little major titles here or topics here. So quality is named here as a potential. I'm sure it is a potential that the more people look at resources and the more people upgrade and redo and further develop resources, the higher the quality will be. Accessibility to resources is a topic. Yes, if there's an open license, you can access it easily. Then money savings. I think Alastair, that's you typed it in. It's an issue. It's definitely a point. An excellent potential. We'll see. Sharing good practices and experiences. I also liked the comment about opens the language. Well, just by the hint of a classroom, the challenge is also, but at the moment, which is also why we're doing this project, that there's just so many resources in English, and we have to get more teachers to develop resources in other languages as well, of course. We have the use of multimedia. It's not very OER specific, but of course it's in there as well, and easier access to resources, which enables you also to self-study if you can find curriculums and so on online. So that's the potential side. From scrolling down, I hope I didn't forget anything. Here also enforce informal and lifelong learning. Yeah, if everyone can find it, everyone can use it. It's definitely a potential. Alastair, what about the challenges side?
Okay, I perhaps haven't been quite as organised as you, but I've been thinking about this, and it seems to be that one of the comments that came up most commonly was ways of motivating staff. I think this is absolutely key. It's really right that people have brought this up. It seems to me that there's probably two ends of this spectrum. There are the idealistic reasons for engaging in open ed, and there are people who are really passionate about this because they believe it in their souls that that sharing is the right thing to do. Working with others is the way that they wish to develop their own practice. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's the much more pragmatic motivation for taking part. In other words, this makes my life easier. I'm going to find some stuff that's low cost, that's already done, and hopefully it's going to make things better for me and for my learners. So my only comment really is to say that it's great that you've worked out that this is something you need to do, and you'll be the best judges of how to approach your staff, your colleagues, in order to motivate them. But it's probably a combination of the two. I think the question that's just come up about Gudmanda, I think, is about what's the workload. I think that's a more general question about, how much time of much of our lives are we going to give up to this new open world. And I've just shared that when we did the little project in Derby, we deliberately kept it very small and not demanding for people. We asked them to find 3 resources, one of which they would adapt, and the other 2 which they would just use with their learners, and then they would feedback how that had gone. So they were engaging in the process of open education without actually having to spend a lot of time on it. Some of the other comments that came up, trying to do justice to it, that questions of quality, can we trust the quality of the materials that we're using? And that's a very fair point. And then the level of skills of the learners once they're, the teachers once they're motivated. Actually, have they got the technical skills to cope with using and adapting? Using is usually fairly straightforward, but adapting is more difficult. But also linked to that is a pedagogical skill of actually making the judgment, is this the right material to do the job I want it to? I think all of this is a way of saying, bloody good course, join it, because I think Ines and her colleagues are going to do a really good job on this.
Well, thank you, Alastair. I have actually something to add at this point, just about the timing. Very valuable point and answer from you, Alastair. I believe one of the questions also pointed more towards the course timing. So how long, how much of a commitment will the training, the online training part and so on actually will be. You can see that we have estimated about, each week will be one topic. We start at the 1st of November and the end or the first week of December, and each week we will talk or discuss about one module. We will be a bit more precise on the online learning platform. You can then in the introduction of each module see how much time from you dedication is estimated for this training. So I don't want to go too deep into that. You can see this on the online platform. And right, it depends also, that's one point. There are tasks that you can do by yourself at home and, engage in looking for licenses, adapting and applying licenses to your work. It's up to you if you want to do that during the online phase at home, or if you want to do that starting from the face-to-face workshop on, and take this as a project. Okay, I have here material for an English course, and I will do all the steps that the training recommends starting from that point on. So that's a little bit of a difference, but maybe it becomes clearer when you look on the platform. And then there was one more question. Oh yeah, the question about the social engagement of learners. There will be activities, as you will see on the platform, that will encourage learners to do what we do in the face-to-face also as an option online. I think that was a question. I hope I answered them all. Thank you, Elena, for the compliment. We're glad you're joining us, hopefully. And thanks, Kevin, for taking up the presentation at this point, because I just want to remind you at the very end here to please join the course. Here is the link for it again. It's very long, I'm sorry. Just log in. It asks you for a name and for an email, I believe, just like here for the webinar. So there's not much you have to type to enter, and then join us in the course. Stay tuned via Google+. If you haven't signed up yet, we will keep you up to date on whatever is happening in the OER world in adult education. So if you have any further questions, this is my contact. I posted our website, of course, as well. There's the contact of Kevin, who is the contact person for Leicester in England. So if you have specific questions also about the workshops there, please contact him. And we have
I posted my address earlier on as well in the chat room. So if people scroll right up to the top, they'll see it. I'll put it in again now.
Excellent. And Maria Troya will be the contact person for Romania. So if you have questions about the workshop there, then please contact her. Thank you for joining us today. I don't know if I haven't forgotten anything, Kevin. I'll wrap it up here. I hope to see you all in our webinars and of course, on the online platform. Thank you very much to Alastair Clark for joining us today. I hope you will be available, and we'll see you sometime in our Google Plus community it would be a pleasure if you'd share your experience throughout the platform.
Thank you very much.
I think
I think this is a great project, and I think, yeah, if I could just end up by saying that everybody involved in this project is doing some really important pioneering work. So shout about what you're doing and make sure you're very visible.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now. So those of you who are watching the recording, thank you very much indeed for coming. And as Ines said, we'll see